Hi, everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of the Talk Room series of podcasts. In this episode, we examine the question of how to be your best self. We do that by examining mental health and well-being and how that applies to people's daily lives. And for those people who have yet to see any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce you to my co-presenter, Wendy, who's a hugely experienced and fully accredited CBT psychotherapist and EMDR therapist in private practice. Wendy's been involved in the subject of mental health and well-being for well over 35 years now. So an absolute pleasure to have you here once again, Wendy.
Thank you, Ian. An absolute pleasure to have you here as well. And to return the compliment, I'd like to introduce my um, Ian. Ian, you are a senior accredited National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society member and the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. So a warm, warm welcome to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy. So today we're going to look at the subject of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm for business people, and why limit it to men. So, Wendy.
Yes, you're right. It might seem a strange thing not to be all inclusive, but I really do think that it's important to separate some of the challenges that I think each of the genders have, and obviously I want to help women as well. And my intention is to do a different podcast series on women and stress.
Hmm.
But I do think there are some slightly different areas, and that's why I've chosen it to do that. And as part of my interest in stress for businessmen, I've actually sort of created sort of 12 points, 12 steps. Is it okay if I just tell them what they are, Ian? Is
Yeah,
that all right with
please
you?
do. Please do, Wendy. Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't an exhausted list. This is just based on my own personal experience of working with people and also what research says and what, on stress and everything like that. So the first point to mention is actually defining what stress is. That's obviously really important and to maybe ascertain how stressed you are. The second one I've included is it's called the vicious cycle of stress. So you understand why a situation happens and then how it sort of causes more and more problems. So that's point number two. The third point is called purpose and meaning, how to actually improve a feeling of more purpose and meaning in your life. The fourth one is all about physical activity. Number five is called emotional regulation. If people don't know what that means, I will explain that as we go along. Number six, I've included how to challenge challenging thoughts, how to challenge your own thoughts. Number seven is mindfulness and meditation. Number eight, I've called that engagement. And again, I'll explain that as we go along. Number nine is a segment on overcoming worry. That's a very common thing that I notice people do a lot nowadays. Number 10, which I think is perhaps more of a man thing, is fearing failure and perfectionism, especially with business people. Number 11 is resilient mindset. And number 12 is actually getting a good night's sleep. So they're the things that I've focused on I've created an ebook on this, and I'm going to be giving some top tips from my ebook.
Wonderful. Um, and
Yep.
uh, I just checking that you'd finished. So if people um, have listened to the podcast and they're looking for professional help, what should they do, Wendy?
Uh, so they're very well to download my ebook, but what I will do is just go into a bit more detail of those 12 steps. Is okay, but at the end I will mention the ebook, which is available on my website, wendycastillo.com. So but is it okay if I just give a little bit more detail into
Please,
those 12 steps?
please.
Okay, lovely. Fine. So if we go back to the first point, which is stress. Um, So it's quite important to think about what is stress. And one of the Oxford English dictionaries of stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. So a lot of situations which, are demanding your time and actually cause just a lot of stress and strain in your body, both emotionally, physically, and even in your thoughts as well. So that's quite a good definition, I think. And you can do a stress test on my website as well. You can go and download that to actually see how stressed you are. That might be something useful people want to do. And then the second point, going back to the vicious cycle of stress. So if I can give a practical example.
Hmm.
So imagine your boss asks you to create an urgent project, but tells you on Friday night and it's got to be done by Monday morning. It's absolutely imperative you do this. It's really, really urgent. But of course, you promise your family time at the weekend. But I think this is a bit of a male thing. You see yourself as a provider. You feel you need the job to provide for your family, and you fear losing your job if you don't do this. You have to feel you've got no choice. You sacrifice your weekend and you miss out on your family time. Now, the problem with this is there's unintended consequences here. So one of the unintended consequences might be that you arrive at work, you've done the project, but you're absolutely exhausted on Monday, and then you make loads of mistakes at work. So not only do you feel anger and resentment towards your boss, maybe your partner also has resentment towards you for not prioritizing your family. So into my ebook, I go about different ways you can solve this problem. But that's a common thing I think people are finding nowadays is just having to balance that work and life balance and feeling they've got no choice and they have to put work first all the time because
Hmm.
they fear losing their jobs. So that's one point about the vicious cycle of stress. The next point I want to go on to is purpose and meaning. And this is really about what is important in your life. And another way of looking at it is what do you value in your life? And this is a really good thing to think about. What is important to you? Is it your relationships, your health, your occupation, what you do for fun, recreational, and maybe sort of spiritual or religious values as well, or contributions to society might be another one. And in my ebook, I go through each one of these and help you to sort of really think about in each category what it is that's important in your life. So there may be things about, being close to family members, having harmony, spending time with your family members might be really important. Your health, physical exercise might be very important, or eating well. So you actually write these down and actually spend time really thinking about what's important. And then the idea is that you'll focus your life on these things so that you actually get a better, clearer sense of purpose, ideally on a daily basis. The next one is physical activity. And obviously, there's very obvious benefits of physical activity. Most people know that, you get a sort of like a runner's high or you get an increase of dopamine if you actually sort of start to do those physical activities. But it goes into a bit more detail as to how it benefits your health, how to motivate yourself, and even just a brisk walk. If you can just manage a 5-minute walk, just going out in your garden or just going around a street, this tiny little steps can also make a big difference as well. So I talk about that. The next one is called emotional regulation. Um, and this is really important. It's about emotional regulation means about feeling more in control of your emotions, not feeling so out of control, not feeling you're either going up, you're crashing down, going up, crashing down. You feel as though you're more regulated, you're more in control. So that's a really nice thing to actually think. And one very simple technique you can do to improve emotional regulation is actually breathing slightly differently. And the one I just want to encourage people to do, it's called soothing rhythm breathing. And all this is just focusing on your breathing, focusing on how your diaphragm breathes, breathing from your diaphragm, but breathing in very slowly and gently, and then breathing out very slowly and gently. And carrying on breathing in slowly and gently, and breathing out slowly and gently. And just taking your time to do that. Just gently focusing on getting that into a soothing rhythm breathing. So you're not holding your breath, you're not counting your breath, you're just very slowly breathing in and breathing out in a slow, gentle way. And if you practice that enough, you should actually notice that your actual stress levels goes down and you feel more emotional regulated. If you don't feel that's enough information, again, I've got resources on my website to help you to master that skill. Okay. The next one I think is really important is actually looking at the way we think about things. Firstly, understanding what our thoughts are, and then the next step is actually changing or challenging our thoughts. And this is very key to cognitive behavioral therapy. And as an accredited cognitive behavioral therapist, we talk a lot about how our thinking affects our mood, our physiology, and our behavior. So the first step is actually, realize what's going on in your mind. And that could be actually writing it down. Actually, at the time of the thought, think, okay, hang on a minute. What is my interpretation of this? What am I saying to myself? What are my thoughts? And writing them down. And actually noticing what thoughts, it's called the hot thought. What thoughts cause a distressing emotion, like I'm not being listened to. That could perhaps create a feeling of hurt or anger or rejection. Okay, so you have to then think, okay, if my thought is I'm not listened to, is that rational or irrational? If it's rational and I'm not being listened to, what can I do about it? How can I solve that problem? But if it is irrational and it's just in my head, okay, maybe I can think of perhaps a more rational thought and say, hang on a minute, this isn't my head. Maybe I could just kind of like talk to the person, understand a little bit more what they're saying, why there's a miscommunication there, and actually sort of improve the situation. But identifying those hot, negative, distorted thoughts first is very much a step to actually better understanding your thoughts. And that can actually help your stress, and it can also help your emotional regulation as well. Point number 7, mindfulness and meditation. And this is very, very simple, but very, very powerful. And a lot of people now might have heard of the words mindfulness and meditation. And I think there's often an image, isn't it, of somebody going and sitting cross-legged for hours on end in sort of, you know, by the sun or whatever it is, or in nature. And I think a lot of people, especially sort of stress businessmen who are very, very busy, they've got a lot of responsibility, they're trying to juggle a lot of things, feel I don't have the time to do that. It'd be lovely to sit and listen to meditation for 40 minutes, but I just can't fit that into my life. So one thing is actually just really practicing being caught in the moment, being in the moment as well. And we can do this in very simple ways through our daily activities. So when we're eating, rather than just sitting at the desk and wolfing our food down, just take those 10 minutes to sit down and eat and savor your food. Enjoy your food. Enjoy the smell, the taste, how it looks, the flavors, the textures. And that's very good for our digestion and our health as well. So that's one very simple little thing to do, is just notice when you're actually either ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. Let me just go and just stay in the present moment. Let me just go for a short walk and really look around, look at nature, sort of take it in, or do little things like eating mindfully, sitting or having a drink mindfully as well, having a cup of coffee and really noticing the taste, the smells, the texture of the coffee, enjoying the warmth of holding it into our cup. All these things are really, really good ways of keeping ourselves in the moment. The next one, which I think is a really good one, is called engagement. This is something, again, very, very simple, but so effective. And it's a little bit different to mindfulness, but it's actually engrossing yourself in the present, in some kind of activity that you enjoy. And this could be anything. It could be things you haven't done for ages that you like to take up again. It could be simple things to do around the house. So examples could be gardening, enjoyment in crafts, creating art, music, or even cooking. Um, and the idea really is you choose an activity, maybe gardening might be one, and you bring your full attention to the activity as well. So it's a bit like mindfulness. You bring your five senses. So if you're gardening, it's great for the smelling of the flowers, the beauty of the flowers, touching the earth, the physical sensation of digging the earth, smelling the grass, all that type of thing. And so you're fully absorbed in that. And the more you're absorbed in that, you get what's called a flow. You get almost like time flies. You're so engrossed in it that nothing else sort of matters really. So any kind of worry or stress thoughts just sort of go back to your back of mind. And you're doing something enjoyable and pleasurable. So again, it gives you all those pleasant sort of happy hormones, as we call them. It makes you feel good as well. And so again, it's also something useful. Gardening is also something useful you're doing. So you're not wasting your time. You're doing something useful. If there's meaning behind it, isn't there? Making a beautiful garden as well. But you're fully absorbed in that process. So people love doing that. And that's a very, very effective way of managing stress. Number 9, I've included a bit in worry because I think I said before, there are so many people who worry nowadays, just worry constantly and have got no understanding or ways of stopping it. So again, there's a chapter in my ebook about this. Um, so one of the things that I recommend people do is actually get really, really good at problem solving. Okay. So this is actually a worry that you can solve. It has to be something practical you can do about your worry. So the idea is that you brainstorm the solutions, you write it down, but you actually make a list of all the solutions that you can think of to solve this particular worry. Then the next step is you choose, say, 3 to 4 solutions that you think are feasible, the best ones that you can think of. And then say for these 3 or 4, you write down the pros and cons of each one. And it is quite sort of rational, problem solving, systematic on purpose. And so once you've actually done all the pros and cons, it gives you a much clearer idea of what are the steps that you think are best. So then you write them down in steps. You write them down very clearly and logical in the order that you're going to do them. So step 1 is this, then this step, and this step, and this step. So then you've got an action plan. Then the idea is to implement the action plan and then to evaluate it, because obviously things don't always go according to plan, but you can evaluate it, you can change it, you can amend it. You might need to go back and do some problem solving or go through some pros and cons. But there's something quite nice about feeling control of your worry, to actually doing something that actually takes some of the chaos of your thinking and the chaotic thinking and actually making it much more rational, much more actionable steps. You feel more in control. So that's a very good technique that people can use there. Step number 10 is fear of failure. And I think another trait that professional businessmen have is perfectionism. And I see it again and again and again. And this comes out a lot in behavior. So examples could be just massive, excessive overworking, doing masses of hours. 24/7 working is a good one. Over attention to detail to the point of the nth degree. And also a tendency to go over things again and again and again and again because you're so worried about them being wrong. And a little caveat here, I am aware that some roles do require perfection, and I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about activities which don't require this level of absolute perfection. Okay. And a very simple technique, it's called the Pareto principle. And actually, some people might have heard of that, some people might not have. But it's basically always looking at 80/20. So 20% of problems are caused by 80% of people that we see, would be an example. So the idea is if you put in 80% of a report, say, that's good enough. If you do like the other 20, it doesn't really make a big difference to the report. You're just kind of, fine tuning, putting in a nice sort of full stop there or anything like that. The actual basic work is done. Now, if you are a perfectionist, working towards 80% will probably be very, very hard. But what you can start with is maybe, okay, maybe 98% will be okay for this report. 2% is not going to make any difference to this. And then you continue to sort of work on, so you get the perfectionism down. So it's like a graded exposure thing as well. And it takes time to sort of stop these behaviors, because you've still got the underlying fear of failure there, that if I don't do it properly, something terrible is going to happen. I'm going to get the sack, or I'm going to feel terrible, or I've let all my family down as well. So this is why there's these perfectionist traits. But you can start very smallly by actually just reducing those perfectionism. Okay. Number 11 is resilient mindset. And I think this is such an important one. Our mindset towards situations is very key. So, the definition of mindset, resilient mindset, is really the ability to bounce back at times of distress. So important there. And one thing I think you can do is to create an inspiring mantra that you can say to yourself every day. And this mantra, you have it everywhere. Have it on your phone, put it on your laptop, stick it in your car, put it in the mirror when you're doing your shaving every day, or whatever you do, or cut your hair. Um, an example of a mantra could be a saying you say again and again and again. So, one example I like to give you is, whatever happens, I will take the learning from this experience and be stronger for it. So, what that means, even if you have a difficult day or a problem or things go wrong, you always take the learning. You always sort of say, okay, there's some learning here, there's some wisdom here, and I'm going to be stronger for it. So actually, rather than crash down when things go wrong and take ages to get up again, you bounce back quicker, and actually better, because you're learning from the process as well. And so if something happens again, the dip is less, and that's about being more resilient. Okay. And the last one, which again, almost every person that I see has a problem with, is sleeping. And there's a whole chapter on sleeping, tips about how to improve your sleep. But one thing I just want to say in today's podcast is, it's called sleep hygiene. And what that means, it's simply getting into a good routine about sleep. So it's telling your body that, you go to bed at 10:30 and you get up at 6. You try and do that every day, so that you're training your brain to say, this is bedtime, and this is time when you get up, and that really helps. And the second thing about sleep hygiene is winding down. So say from 6 o'clock or something, you make sure you don't have any caffeine, you're not overstimulated, you're not having a lot of blue light activities, you're not watching sort of nightmarish films that will give you nightmares, or loads of gory blood or whatever sort of disturbs you. You're just trying to help your brain to relax and wind down as well. And maybe definitely not thinking about work, maybe thinking about things which are more enjoyable and pleasurable. So you actually start to prepare your brain for sleep. So there are my top tips. And anything else you want to ask at all, Ian?
I just thought really interesting, and I'm sure there'll be lots and lots of people that will will listen to that and have a much better idea about things. Um, but I'm sure there will be people out there who will have heard you talk about it and think, oh, actually, I would really benefit from either getting hold of your ebook or reaching out to you. And I just wonder whether you can just talk to people a little bit more about that.
Yes, certainly, Ian. So the ebook is available on my website, which is wendycastellino.com. It's spelled as it is in the show notes. You just need to type that into Google and it should come up. And the ebook is there to freely download. It's not very long. It's 30 pages and it's a lot of pictures. Because again, I think people are very busy nowadays and they just need to hear some sort of key points or top tips. If they want to have any more information about how to manage stress and they want more of a sort of therapy approach, that's absolutely fine. And they can contact me and arrange that with me directly. And what about you, Ian? How can people get hold of you with your resources?
Yeah, so we have a we have a whole team of people that work with stress and anxiety and overwhelm, really significant issues that we're faced with in today's society. And we work with a lot of clients around the country, supporting them in these areas. People can get in touch at www.hopeforminds.co.uk. That's www.hopeforminds.co.uk. We have a whole variety of free resources up on the website. And we also offer free consultations with people where they can just talk to us about their needs in a little bit more detail as well. So it's really just for me to thank you, Wendy, for today. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to you talk about such an important area, and also just to get to hear about your ebook as well. I know you have a whole variety of resources up on your website, so people would find an interesting resource area to look at, I'm sure. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of our listeners today as well.
Thank you, and please subscribe. Click the button to subscribe, and please share this podcast with other people if you think it might be useful. Thank you, everyone, for listening.